My ex-girlfriend cheated on me with my older brother while I was asleep, so I got revenge. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. This story isn't pretty, but it's the kind of tale that shows what betrayal feels like, how far someone can push you, and what happens when you take justice into your own hands. Buckle up, because this is a long one. I'm a 26-year-old guy who's been living with my older brother, Mark, for the past couple of years. Mark is 29, and we've always had a decent relationship. Growing up, we had the usual sibling rivalry, but nothing out of the ordinary. Mark's always been the kind of guy people gravitate toward. He's good-looking, athletic, charming, you know the type. He can walk into a room and have everyone laughing in minutes. I've always admired him, but at the same time, living in his shadow wasn't always easy. I'm more of the laid-back type, quieter, and while I have my own strengths, I've never been the center of attention like Mark. Now, let me introduce Jess. Jess was my high school girlfriend, and we dated for about 2 years back then. It was one of those intense, young love relationships where you think the world revolves around each other. We had a lot of great times, but when I left for college and she stayed behind, the distance made things tough and we eventually broke up. There was no huge fight or drama, it was just the natural progression of life. We lost touch after that, but I always had a soft spot for her. Fast forward to 6 months ago. I was at a mutual friend's party, and lo and behold, there was Jess. It had been years since I'd seen her, and she looked incredible. We caught up over a couple of drinks, and it felt like no time had passed. We started reminiscing about the old days, laughing about high school, and before I knew it, we were texting each other regularly. It didn't take long for us to rekindle our romance. It was like slipping back into something comfortable, but with the added bonus of a few years of maturity under our belts. The first few months with Jess were amazing. We were spending nearly all our time together, and it felt like we were picking up right where we left off. We'd go out on dates, hang out at my place or hers, and everything seemed perfect. I started to believe this might actually be the real deal. Maybe we'd just been too young back then, and now was our time. She even started coming over to my apartment regularly, which, as I mentioned, I shared with Mark. Here's where things started to feel a little off. Jess and Mark got along really well. Well, in hindsight, they'd always been friendly back in high school when I was dating Jess. But now it seemed like they were almost closer than before. Mark had always been a flirt, but I figured it was just his personality. I told myself I was being paranoid, even when Jess would make little comments about how funny or charming Mark was. She'd often suggest that the three of us hang out, which at first seemed fine. I mean, she was my girlfriend and Mark was my brother. Why wouldn't they get along? But soon, I started to notice things, like the way she'd laugh a little too hard at his jokes, the way they'd sit closer than necessary on the couch when we all watched TV, or the way she'd ask me about his plans, almost like she was more interested in what he was up to. I ignored my gut for a long time, thinking it was just me being insecure. After all, she was with me, not him, right? But that nagging feeling in the back of my mind never really went away. It was a Saturday night when everything came crashing down. Jess had come over to spend the night, and we had a nice dinner, watched a movie, and just hung out. Mark was out with his friends, so it was just the two of us at home. By around midnight, I was exhausted, so I told Jess I was going to bed. She said she wasn't tired yet and would stay up for a while to finish the movie. I fell asleep pretty quickly, but sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. It was one of those moments where you're not fully conscious, but just aware enough to know something's off. I heard faint footsteps, followed by whispers and a soft laugh, Jess's laugh. I assumed Mark had come home and they were just talking, maybe watching something on TV, so I didn't think much of it and fell back asleep. The next morning, though, everything felt strange. Jess wasn't in bed with me, and when I got up, she was acting distant. She left early, saying she had to run some errands, and Mark barely said 2 words to me all morning. My gut told me something was wrong, but I tried to brush it off. I figured I was just overthinking everything. Again, a couple of days later, I got a text from my best friend, Nick, saying he needed to talk to me in person. Now, Nick doesn't usually get dramatic, so I knew something was up. We met up at a coffee shop, and he was clearly uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be the one to tell me what he had to say. After a few minutes of awkward small talk, he finally dropped the bomb. Jess and Mark had hooked up. Apparently, one of Mark's friends had been at the same party as him that night, and he overheard Mark drunkenly bragging about how he had hooked up with Jess while I was asleep. My stomach dropped. The pieces of the puzzle started clicking into place. The late-night whispers, the awkwardness the next morning, Jess's sudden distance. It was all true. I was livid. My own brother had betrayed me. And Jess? I didn't even have words for what I was feeling. I went home and confronted Mark right away. He didn't even bother denying it. He admitted that they'd hooked up, that it was a drunken mistake, and that it didn't mean anything. But that didn't matter to me. The damage was done. My brother and the girl I thought I was falling in love with again had stabbed me in the back, and they didn't even have the decency to try and hide it. First, I didn't know what to do. I was hurt, angry, humiliated, but mostly I was numb. I couldn't believe that two of the people closest to me would do something like this. After a few days of wallowing in misery, I realized I couldn't let them get away with it. I couldn't just sit back and let them think they could betray me and face no consequences. I started with Jess. She had always taken pride in her career. She worked at a marketing firm and had made a big deal out of how professional she was, how respected she was by her coworkers and her boss. I knew she'd been up for a promotion soon, and I figured her squeaky clean image was important to that. I decided to hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation. I went through our old texts, gathering screenshots of messages where she talked about how much she wanted to be with me and make things work, while knowing that she cheated on me with my brother. I also collected a few photos of us looking happy together to show just how fake she had been. Then, I wrote an anonymous email to her boss, explaining in detail what had happened. I attached the texts and photos as proof and sent the email not only to her boss but also to a few of her coworkers. But I didn't stop there. Jess was really close to her family, especially her mom, who thought the world of her. So I sent the same evidence to her mom. I knew it would crush her family, but at that point I didn't care. I wanted Jess to feel the same pain and betrayal I had felt. It didn't take long for everything to blow up. Within a day, Jess's work caught wind of the situation, and she was called into a meeting. Apparently, her company had a strict policy about conduct outside of work that could damage their reputation, and sleeping with her boyfriend's brother while he was asleep didn't exactly scream professionalism. She was fired on the spot. Her family, especially her mom, was devastated. Her mom called me, crying, asking if what I told her was true. I didn't hold back. I told her everything. Jess was kicked out of her parents' house that same day. Within the span of 48 hours, she lost her job, her home, and her reputation. As for Mark, I confronted him one last time, told him I was done with him, and moved out of our apartment within a week. He tried to apologize, saying he'd been drunk and didn't mean to hurt me, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. As far as I was concerned, I no longer had a brother. Since then, I've cut off all contact with Jess and Mark. Last I heard, Jess was crashing at a friend's place, still trying to find a new job, and dealing with the fallout from her family. Mark's still living in our old apartment, and I haven't spoken to him since I left. I'm not sure if they're still seeing each other, and frankly, I don't care. I'm just glad I got out of that toxic situation. Was my revenge a bit over the top? Maybe, but after the betrayal I went through, I don't regret a single thing. I made sure they both felt the consequences of their actions, and now I can finally start to move on with my life without them dragging me down. So yeah, that's my story. It's messy, it's brutal, but it's also proof that karma has a way of coming back around. New update. Hey Reddit. I'm back with a detailed update on the ongoing saga involving my ex-girlfriend, Jess, and my older brother, Mark. A lot has happened since my last post, and it's been a whirlwind of emotions and unexpected developments. I'm here to share the full story and how things have unfolded recently. A few weeks ago, I was catching up with an old friend, Jake, at a coffee shop. Jake and I used to be close, but we had drifted apart over the years. During our conversation, he casually mentioned that Jess and Mark were now living together and expecting a baby. I was stunned. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. According to Jake, Jess and Mark managed to reconcile after everything that had happened. Jess found out she was pregnant a few months ago, and Mark decided to stay with her despite the scandal. They moved in together, and now they're trying to start a family. The news was shocking, and it left me grappling with a mix of emotions: disbelief, anger, and a strange sense of resignation. A few days after learning about Jess and Mark's situation, I received an unexpected phone call from Jess. She wanted to meet up and talk. Despite my reservations, I agreed to meet her. I thought it might provide some closure or at least give me a better understanding of where things stood. When we met, Jess was visibly pregnant, and she looked both nervous and determined. We met at a small cafe, and she started by apologizing profusely for everything that had happened. She acknowledged the pain she caused me and said that she was deeply regretful for her actions. She said that she and Mark were working hard to rebuild their relationship and wanted to make amends with me. During our conversation, Jess expressed that she and Mark were trying to move forward and focus on their future as a family. They were working on repairing their relationship, and Jess wanted to show me that she was genuinely sorry. She said they were trying to be better people and hoped that we could at least be civil with each other. But as the conversation progressed, Jess made a surprising move. She began to talk about how much she had missed me and how the time apart had made her realize the depth of her feelings for me. She suggested that maybe we could find a way to reconnect, especially since Mark had been supportive but not completely fulfilling her needs. It was clear that Jess was trying to test the waters to see if there was a chance for us to rekindle something. She was candid about her dissatisfaction with her current situation and seemed to be looking for an escape route. The situation took a dramatic turn when Jess directly asked if we could explore something together. She implied that her relationship with Mark wasn't as fulfilling as she had hoped and hinted that maybe we could find a way to be together, despite everything that had happened. She even mentioned that she wasn't entirely happy and that Mark wasn't meeting all her emotional needs. I was floored by her audacity. The sheer nerve of coming back after everything and trying to start something new with me was beyond comprehension. I was overwhelmed with anger and disbelief. I couldn't believe that Jess thought she could waltz back into my life after all that had happened and expect me to just forget the past. I made it clear to Jess that I was not interested in rekindling anything with her. I told her that my feelings had moved on, and I had no desire to be involved in any more emotional complications. I reminded her of the pain and betrayal I had experienced and told her that I had no intention of reopening old wounds. Jess was clearly disappointed and tried to convince me that things could be different. She pleaded with me to reconsider, but I remained resolute. I was determined not to be drawn back into the mess that had caused so much hurt and turmoil. I haven't had a chance to speak with Mark directly since the meeting with Jess. From what I've heard through mutual friends, Mark is aware of the meeting and the conversation. It seems he's trying to focus on his new family and avoid further complications. He's been relatively quiet about the situation, and I haven't seen much of him. Mark's attempt to reconcile with me through Jess seems to have been a last-ditch effort to fix things, but it hasn't worked out as they might have hoped. The tension between Jess and Mark, along with the public fallout, has made their relationship complicated. It's evident that they're trying to make the best of their situation, but the shadow of the past still lingers. This latest twist has been a powerful reminder of the complexity of human relationships. It's clear that Jess and Mark are trying to build a future together, but their past actions continue to create ripples in their lives. For me, this experience has reinforced the importance of setting boundaries and sticking to them. I've been focusing on my own growth and healing. The betrayal and pain I experienced have made me more aware of what I want and don't want in my life. I'm committed to moving forward and building a future that is free from the toxicity of the past. I'm grateful for the support and advice I've received throughout this journey. It's been a tough road, but I'm learning to navigate it with clarity and strength. The experience has taught me valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the importance of self-respect. Thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered support. Your encouragement has been invaluable as I work to move forward and embrace a more positive chapter in my life.